Calvin Kattar put on a hell of a performance. Both of those guys put on a hell of a fight. Chikadze, I also thought, impressed me. Both of these guys impressed me, and I learned new things about them, as you'll do with any fight. Calvin Kattar showed, obviously I know he does other things than punching, but I just had him labeled as a boxer. And to see him win this fight on his feet was really impressive. That guy, he's more than just a boxer. Just because he's not so kick heavy, I think a lot of people are quick to label him as a boxer, myself included. But he is a very good fighter, very good striker, and he roughed Chikadze up with elbows, which was really impressive, among other strikes too. Front kicks, fucking knees, etc. But and his jab, of course, wasn't too bad. He had great hands in that fight. But it's hard to talk about the success of Calvin Kattar in this fight without talking about what happened in round one. That's where I think he may have taken the fight out of Chikadze by taking him down. Well, Chikadze slipped and stumbled, and Kattar kind of crashed into a takedown, and then they got up, clinched up or whatever, and Kattar picked him up, scooped him up, and slammed him, which was emphatic, if nothing else. But I do think it was a deterrent for the rest of the fight. I do think that's one of the many spots where Chikadze felt like, oh shit, I don't want to get close to this guy. He can rip me to the floor. And on the floor, I think it just reinforced everything. What we saw was dominance from Calvin Kattar. I don't want to make it sound like he obviously didn't submit him, but he worked him over. And Chikadze was very conservative, very composed. That's a guy just, with his frame and whatever, he's not going to be exploding out of there. And he kind of conceded the round, but fought conservatively, which was wise. Having said that, I don't know how wise it was, because he was depleted. I can't attribute it directly to the grappling, even though I think no matter what, it's going to at least be a part of it, if not all of it. But there were some strikes in round two where it just, he looked good, as anybody does for the first 10 seconds of the round or whatever. But it was noticeable in round two that the fight was kind of leaving him. The energy was leaving him. He wasn't as sharp. He was being crowded from the pressure, which I think is absolutely a part of it, if not all of it, the Calvin Kattar's pressure. But he was hit with some strikes, too. He was hit with a big uppercut. He was hit with a spinning elbow, which Dana White said is what changed the course of the fight. I think Dana said that. And Calvin Kattar, speaking of elbows, he looked really good. Really good, especially towards the very end of the fight with those elbows. He was, just presenting different challenges. And the pressure, like I said, which is absolutely a part of Chikadze folding, or, not folding, but breaking. His gas tank breaking, certainly. And I say that because Chikadze didn't break. And that's what really impressed me about him. He was still in the fight, but he was half the fighter. He was at 50% capacity, energy-wise and whatever, at the midpoint of round two. Whereas Calvin Kattar wasn't. And Calvin Kattar, beat the brakes off of him. It was slow and it was steady. He was in his face constantly, just, pressuring him, putting him on the back foot, which all fighters will tell you is fatiguing. Much more fatiguing than going forward, is going backwards, having someone overwhelming you. And I think that, combined with the grappling and just all of it, it just it ruined the fight for him. He wasn't able to get any more respect, get any more distance, stop Kattar from storming him down. And he was just gradually but slowly, but surely fatiguing. He was fatiguing throughout the whole fight. And I think another minute, another 10 seconds, to be honest, he loses that fight via finish. But Calvin Kattar stayed on him. And look, I didn't expect this. I picked Chikadze to win the fight. I thought Chikadze was kind of like a stylistic nightmare for Calvin Kattar. Like I said, I dismissed Kattar all along as just this boxer. His legs are going to get chewed up in this fight, and then his body, which did happen early on. But it's just, I had this one wrong. Calvin Kattar was just a supreme MMA fighter. Just that upper echelon, top fighter. Really, really good just about everywhere. And able to fight at the highest level in all places for the longest fucking time. And Calvin Kattar's able to do it both ways, as the hammer and the nail. Chikadze shown, even though he's got to work on his cardio and whatever to get himself to the level of Calvin Kattar, Chikadze showed that he is tenacious as fuck. Like I said before, he doesn't break. He didn't break. His gas tank broke. The tank was leaking. But aside from that, he didn't break, and he showed that tenacity, which, tenacity is throwing down when you're tired, when you're hurt, that you're still trying to win. It's different from just having the heart. A lot of fighters have heart and they don't try to win. They find that comfortable spot at the end of somebody's jab or something, or, hey, I'm not going to get finished here. And they ride the fight out, and they make a career of losing fights that way. Chikadze was still scratching and clawing for a victory, even though he wasn't going to get it on points. He was still trying to win, all throughout the fight. And in the end, at the very end, certainly, he was trying to survive. And he did, to his credit. Even though Kattar beat the fuck out of him with those elbows at the end, in the last 5 seconds, 10 seconds. But Kattar cut his face up, Chikadze's face up, beat him up really badly. He did show, look, if you want to fight at the highest level of MMA, of the UFC, you got to be able to swim with the sharks. And Chikadze's got to work on a lot of things. And look, it'll come in time. I think he's going to need confidence and certainly cardio to be able to implement different tactics and to adapt in the middle of a fight like that. And not every fight's going to be the same, certainly, with deficiencies and whatever on the ground and this and that. Chikadze, he's working on the ground. He's always working on the ground. He's a grappler too, as much as he is not as much as he is a striker, but these days he better be. And I still think he's got a really high ceiling. But this was one of those fights where if you would ask me to look at the top 10 and pick a guy Chikadze could beat, I would have picked Calvin Kattar. And I was wrong. So credit to Kattar, credit to Chikadze. Let me look through the rest of the card here. Credit to Caitlin Chukagin. She went through Jennifer Maia again. That was really impressive. That was basically a 30-27. But Chukagin looked good. She looked, her chin looked as good as ever. And she beat up Jennifer Maia more comfortably this time. It wasn't close. Jennifer Maia did get aggressive. Jennifer Maia landed some nice strikes herself, but Chukagin took control of every minute of that fight. So it was dominance in a sense. Jake Collier beat Jake Sherman. Look, Chase Sherman. Chase Sherman's done in the UFC. I think he's already been cut. If not, he will be cut. We all know. And that guy, I feel bad for him mentally. I think he struggled this last year or so. And I wish him well. Jake Collier, this guy, he's got a great personality. He seems like a fun guy, good guy. And I'm happy to see him having success as a heavyweight. And in his second run in the UFC. Even though I don't think it's his second run technically. But, after such a long break. So, now, he just beat a guy who will be out of the UFC by the time he's fighting his next fight. And there's talk of him fighting Justin Tafa or, who the fuck did he call out? I don't know. There was someone else. And then it moved to Justin Tafa, and he mentioned the weight. Said, all right, if he shows up on weight, because Tafa missed weight at heavyweight. So, yeah. Cool for Jake Collier. Who else was there? Brandon Royval defeated Rogerio Bontorin. Really good fight. Brandon Royval is one of my favorite fighters in the UFC. Not that, I don't even... I'm saying that based on his fighting. It's not like I follow him that well. I mean, I know what his voice sounds like, and I've seen maybe 5 interviews with the guy. But without even being a big fan and following him closely, as a fighter, he's easily up there. The guy is just pure excitement. And this was a fight in which I expected him to lose. He was the favorite, but I bet against him. And not just because I was getting good odds, but I bet against him. I just realized I had the sun in my face here. Let me try this thing. All right, now it's just on my chin. My chinny chin fuck. Where was I expected Bontarine to win, and he had a lot of moments where that gap in strength was just completely visible and apparent. But Brandon Royval showed that he's the anti-wrestler. He is just nonstop. He's going to score points any which way he can, and he did. He scored a lot of points, I think, on the bottom, even with elbows, and not to mention submissions. So Brandon Royval really worked for this one. It was a close fight. Bontarine absolutely won round 2, I think, and the others were close, but I had Royval winning it. And Royval won a unanimous decision, I believe. I don't know. Either way, great performance. Bill Algeo really liked this guy. Took out Joe Anderson Brito. And then Bill Algeo called out Giga Chikadze before the loss because he didn't know he was going to lose yet. And that's really good because he wasn't going to get him with a victory. I'd like to see the fight, to be honest. Bill Algeo versus Giga Chikadze. I think they have some history, sparring. Bill Algeo said he went to Chikadze's gym, and Chikadze started trying to fight him in a sparring match instead of being more helpful. And then Bill Algeo said, I got the better of him, which, sure, Chikadze would have something to say about that. But nevertheless, I like a story like this, and I really like Bill Algeo turning it up. Turned up the personality, and he turned it up in the fight, taking out Joe Anderson Brito, which is a great victory that's going to get better with age, I think. And, he was relentless. He was relentless as Bill Algeo is. He reminds me a lot of Billy Quarantillo. I just realized both their names are Billy. That's got to have something to do with it. But he still reminds me of him. They're both very similar fighters. And I'd love to see Algeo move up. I know he's going to move up the ladder, but I'd like to see him get the Chikadze fight. I don't think that'll happen. I think Chikadze will end up settling in with somebody like Shane Burgos. But Bill Algeo, he's a really good fighter. I think he's got a deceptive record. I think he's deceptively tough. A deceptively tough problem for a lot of good fighters. I really look stupid with the... I look stupid anyway. Whatever. Jamie Pickett took out Joseph Holmes. That was a good veteran performance. Lost round 1, won rounds 2 and 3. Did a lot with a lot of clinch work and, of course, athleticism he puts into everything. He shut down the youngster. That was a good performance. Court McGee, speaking of veteran performances, took out Ramiz Brahimajaj, or whatever the fuck. And Court looked like the man every step of the way. It was a close first round until he knocked him almost dead with a few seconds left. And then it was dominance after that. Grappling dominance, largely, from Court McGee. But Court looked really good. Great to see him get a victory like that over a youngster. And that's how these guys stick around. These fights that come and go, they're just, it's somebody's whole world ending, or, somebody's career ending, ostensibly, perhaps, if he gets kicked out of the UFC. And just another victory for some veteran that a lot of fans don't truly appreciate after 10 years. Dakota Bush lost to Vyacheslav Slavakos Borshev. Borshev kicked his ass with a body shot and whatever, but before that he was getting his ass kicked. Dakota Bush really impressed me, and I was sure Dakota Bush was going to win that fight, but his durability cracked. He suffered his first loss, and his first TKO or submission loss, this being a TKO or I think even a knockout via body shot. And it was memorable. Really cool win for Slava. And this Slava Claus guy, he's got some dance moves on him. Which, tune in next week and I'll fucking dance for you. Whatever. All right. TJ Brown took out Charles Rosa. This was just strength and wrestling. And I thought Charles Rosa had better grappling, and I still think he does, just submission for submission, of course. But he's one of those guys who's not able to implement his own game plan. He's not able to impose his strength on other fighters, and I feel bad for him in that regard, but it's just the sad truth. And, you know, a guy like that, it's just... that submission over Manny Bermudez really impresses me so much, but if he was that good at submissions, to sound like a noob, the submissions would come. He would have more submission victories. They would show over time. And I know you could not, you know, point to somebody like Matt Serra and say, well, he didn't get too many submission victories in the UFC and whatever. But I'm just saying, you know, this guy, Charles Rosa, I just think he's on his way out at the UFC. I think with this fight, even though hopefully not with this fight, because he did a big favor stepping up to take the fight on a few days' notice. So I think he'll be kept around a little bit, but I don't think he's UFC bound. I think he's got really good submission skills, but he's not able to impose them. Certainly not with a wrestling game plan, which would be the easiest. And even on the bottom, accepting bottom position, you know, again, you don't have to get submissions in the UFC necessarily, I guess. But you, if your submission game is that good, it would at least win rounds. And you're losing rounds on the ground. TJ Brown, and I think Charles Rosa allowed him to put him in the arm triangle choke a few times. And TJ Brown took it every time. And Charles Rosa wasn't able to sweep or get out of it or whatever he was looking to do. He protected himself well. And all the while, TJ Brown was scoring massive points with near submissions. So, great win for TJ Brown. He's a guy that needed that victory, and it's easily the best victory, I think, of his career. And a shitty loss for Charles Rosa. Brian Kelleher took out Kevin Kroom. He didn't take him out, but he beat him by unanimous decision. Really good victory. Kevin Kroom was fighting the whole way. Kroom's another guy like Algio that I just really like fighting. Really like to watch fight. He's all action. He doesn't stop. And he's good everywhere. Or he's good. He's got it, you know, he can submit and knock out top guys in the UFC. Not tippy top, but UFC guys. He's competent. This was a bad loss for him, but again, he took the fight, you know, on like 2 days' notice. Of course, Brian Kelleher met him halfway and moved up 10 pounds, and you could see an easily visible difference, an obvious difference in size. But Kevin Kroom just, he wasn't as technical as Brian Kelleher. And Kelleher was landing the better strikes, and on the ground, just he shut down Kroom's whole game with that guillotine work. You know, he was working him from the guillotine. He was too small to submit him. And certainly when he took his back, he couldn't flatten him out. And when he's on top of him with a guillotine, he can't get his leg all the way around and stop his body from rolling over. And we saw a lot of that. But Kelleher is so good and so dangerous with that guillotine that he was able to control what can be considered the majority of the fight with that move. So it was an interesting fight nonetheless. Pretty sure I covered everything, but yeah, that was not a bad fight night event. I hope you guys enjoyed it. And don't forget to check out my next video, which will be UFC 270, coming up soon. Check it out. Probably going to make some other shit in between now and then. Check that out. Whatever.